was a real prankster, and he was too, and all the boys were, and like when my grandmother died, and because by that time we lived right next door to Grandma, and she's the one that was a deaf mute, and my Uncle Don lived with her, and so when Grandma died, my Uncle Ernie, who had 9 boys, moved into her house the day after she passed away. And they threw out all her knickknacks, all these beautiful English knickknacks and Irish knickknacks that she had. They just, we got a few of them, but they just threw them in a basket and put them out to the curb. And they moved in, and so there was never any barriers around our house or any of the houses until they moved in. And my dad was coming home from work, and there goes one of my cousins with a TV walking down the street. They're going to sell it. Took the lawnmower, and so within days there was a wire fence with electricity going around it, so they couldn't get in our yard. That's and I mean, and like they would taunt me and my sister. We'd go up to play tennis because the school was right there, and Gloria and I would go up to play tennis, and they would come and they, threatening us and going to beat us up. They were mean. I mean, they were mean. And I remember Gloria and I climbing up the fence on the tennis court because they wouldn't do it. Waiting for my brother to get home to see him. and he'd come up the street on his motorcycle. And that was everybody's just about transportation that was young. And we're like, Billy! So they seen him, and they leave us alone. So, and that, but that's where my dad really got serious about politics and that, and he loved it. But then when the accidents started happening and the boat blowing up and that he just, it became enough. And then when I was telling her about after the boating accident where Billy and Ernie and my sister's husband Harold was on that boat that blew. They could never determine why or how or what was the reasoning, and it had to been when they come up, because they put the boats in dry dock every year, and it was Ed first, and then Bill, and then my dad, and they'd go up, get them blessed, and then they'd take them back, and we'd put them in dry dock, and my dad was behind, my brother was ahead. Bill's, and the only thing we could figure out is they thought they were going to get my dad, and they got my brothers instead. And Ernie survived, Bill and Harold did not. And
what year was this?
I was in France at the time, so we went over in 61, so it had to be, I could look it up, it'd have to be 62 or 63, somewheres, because I come back home, and then I went back to France, and that, so it was...
You come back for the funerals.
I came back for the funeral. Just no funeral, it was memorial. Because we never found bodies, They never found bodies.
So memorial.
It was a memorial, and I was home for a month, I stayed for a month, and it was... it had to have been October because I had my birthday there, and that, so, but then it was, after that, when my dad was doing, counseling, and that where he had such a lawyer mind. That's why he wanted me. He wanted me to get business law. He wanted me to go into law, and I hated law. I just did not like law. I liked interior design,
Oh.
and that's what I wanted to do. And that because I refused to do business school. I did not want to do business school or anything like that. And that so I forgot where was I. Oh, and then at that time they had moved out of the house on Prospect Street and moved down into Newfane, just to get away from all the dynamics of because he was quitting it. But he couldn't refuse people. I mean, if they come and say, I need help with this or that, he'd always help. So he felt he needed to get out of town. Plus, dealing with Flossie, she was started out as a bitch, but she became worse than that. I mean, she was one of the meanest people I ever met. Give me but just some of the things that she did, Norma did, to my dad, and that just. Because they stopped abusing us, me and Gloria. They never did anything, but Norma and Flossie would. They beat on Gloria. They put me under
You don't
The
have to talk about
the
this.
staircase.
You
the
don't have to.
staircase. I did better the other night.
Yeah. And this is where she got so scared of the dark because they kept her up underneath there, and so to this day she still has issues with darkness, and then would I'm trying to think of what other the things that you had said. She likes to have the lights on, like outside. This is,
Yeah, I'm not
thinking
scared of. I'm not scared of. What's in the dark? It's the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not what's out there. It's just I don't like the dark.
It just brings back those memories.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, they were mean in other ways. I mean, just because we wouldn't call her mother or mama or anything, she took all my mother's pictures away.
So your mother died when you were 2, but then
3. I was 3. Yeah,
and then,
Gloria was 2.
And then your dad married Flossie when you were like what, 8?
9.
8 or 9? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We were made to be in the wedding, whether we wanted to or not, we were happy with my grandmother. I mean, she was my mother,
And your grandmother was your mother's mother?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're the ones that
Can you give me a water, please?
they had a
Flavored.
Thank you.
big farm up in Herkimer, New York. That's where the Herkimer diamond come from. There's a Herkimer diamond. They had a big farm up there, and her and my grandfather. And did you get it? And because I was born on Park Avenue, is where our house was. It was from where my grandmother's house was. Like my grandmother's house was here, and probably about 2 or 3 blocks down and a couple blocks up is where I was born, at home. We were all born at home except for Gloria, because my mother was sick by that time. And from where my grandma's house was to where the farm was up the transit. We could walk up there to the farm. So when my mother got sick, when the diabetes got so bad, that we moved into my grandmother's house. All of us did. boys and all. And my grandmother wasn't there at that time. When it wasn't until I guess when my mother got really, really sick, and my grandmother came, and we hired a wet nurse, so to nurse Gloria, because she couldn't nurse Gloria. So this had to been Gloria had to be less than a year old at that point when she started really getting bad. And what it was is she needed insulin, and back then it was something new, and she felt my dad couldn't afford it, so she didn't even tell him that she needed it. And so I think she honestly thought that she could control it all with food, and that you can't. Not some of it, you just can't. But I remember it wasn't until my mother died that my grandfather was there, and he was a smoker. But this was all when my dad started going back to school and holding down the jobs and everything. And my grandmother, when I found out later in years that she felt that my father did not take good enough care of my mother, because she was like 34 or 35 when she died, and left with 7 kids, you know, and I mean, the boys were older at the time. They were, I think Bill was probably, he had to be 13 or 14. I'm trying to think. I was, I'm not figuring it. I'm not good at math. But,
Just realized the mic's down there and I've had it on the table.
well, I forgot about it, so.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping I got you recorded because the mic's down here.
Oh, well.
Figures.
I'm not saying it all again.
No.
On that, but we had a friend up the street, Mary, that we really loved her, and we wanted him to marry her if he was going to marry anybody. But we didn't even know he was going with Flossie. We seen her out around Sherman Farms, because we still did all the farm stuff and the horses and everything, because my dad still would, they still brought the horses down from Canada, and my brothers were still training them at the time. And so we'd go out to Sherman Farms. That's where I got lice. Lori and I got lice. We were told we weren't to play with the kids up the next farm, and we snuck up there to play with them and got lice. But that's when we started seeing Flossie coming around, you know, and she was really nice to us. I mean, we thought she was nice and that, but I don't think my dad realized what he got into when he married her, but she loved the politics. She loved the politics, and I think
attention,
and the attention and all.
Being famous, everybody knowing her,
That's
popular.
It. Yep, she liked that and that. So, but oh, you need a pillow?
Oh.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
Yeah, that works.
So okay. Next question. I'm finished with that.
Well, so you're talking about Grandpa and then him getting out. So I had a thought.
Oh, getting out of politics?
Yeah, he got out of politics.
Yeah, mainly he got out of it after with the accident, and he, like I say, he was still doing stuff, and he was with Kugler. He had a big lumber type yard, and there was my brother's Ed still flew him to Albany for meetings and stuff.
So Ed was, when he was in the
Army,
he learned how to fly. So he became a pilot. So he was able to fly Grandpa here and there.
Yeah. up there. So he did that. And Bill still did some work. The boys all did a little bit of something to help my dad out because they just, it was like a family thing, I guess. I don't know. But they like Ed would do that. I know Ernie and Bill did some of his paperwork and that. And lots of times Bill would be with my dad when he'd go places. I'm trying to think of what he did, what his job was, because Ernie was a welder. He liked doing that, so my dad got him into the welding Masons who hate Catholics. It was so funny. Ernie had to get permission to visit us for Christmas and stuff like that from the Masons. And that, but he was visiting Cooler for some reason anyway, and they moved railroad ties, and I think it was Bill or Ed was behind my dad, walking behind, and him and Cooler were up in front talking about whatever it is business that they were doing, and Bill looked up and seen this tie coming across right where my dad was. And no reason, the metal railroad tie, the regular railroad tie was being lifted, and I guess he thought, why is it coming this way? This is the road part going down through there. And then he seen it dropped, and he pushed my dad, and he come back, and Kugler was a little bit ahead, but it caught my dad in the leg and crippled his leg. And so he had a lot of pain after that, and he was a smoker. I mean, he died of a heart attack because of emphysema. He was on oxygen for a long time, and
so back up for a second. You said something when you moved into the house. Grandpa was there for a while.
My grandfather,
right,
yeah, he died there.
Okay.
Yeah,
But why was he not there when you guys moved in with your grandmother?
Well, because they were farmers in Herkimer, okay? So when my dad was already working for the city, he knew it was basically back then it was not as big as Cruces it is now, but back then, I mean, it wasn't. And so my grandfather was a farmer, so when he came, he got on the railroad, so he had to, I don't know, it was the South Pacific. They went certain places and they come back. He was always back at nighttime, but because we would run down to the railroad tracks, which was right there, because Grandma would say, "Grandpa's coming," and we'd run down there, and he was the one at the end that would, do the light, and we'd like, "Hey, Grandpa," and then half an hour later he's home, and so that was his job then. They improvised. I mean, they came over here as farmers because that's what they did in Ireland until their land was taken from them, and because my grandmother spoke Gaelic.
Interesting.
And she.
Do you remember any of it? Or do you
I remember her
words?
singing it. I when I went to Ireland, it was like, oh yeah, I know what you're saying. I couldn't speak it though.
But you can't think of any words at all?
No. Just if a song or that, because she would, she sang like all day long or whatever. When she was sewing,
cool.
she would sing, and she'd sing to us. And I remember a lot of her with me and Gloria, I think because Virginia was older. We had tea time every day, tea time at 2:00 until we went to school. And she made the crumpets, and we had tea. And I never liked tea with milk in it. I don't drink it now, but that's how we had it. That was the Irish way, was with the milk in it. And you put your milk in first.
Oh.
Yes.
Yep.
and then you put your tea in.
Oh.
Because you steep your tea, you put your milk in your cup, you steep your tea for 5 to 10 minutes. That time the milk is cooled down and ready to drink, to have, and that. But she was a terrible cook. I mean, she was a great baker, but she was a terrible cook. She made amazing soups and amazing bread, but to cook a steak, she could not do it. It was just pot food. That's what they did, pot food. And when you have 7 kids and 3 adults, that's
easiest, cheapest way to go.
Yeah, and that's it. And oatmeal every morning. And I remember, and we've talked about this up the mall because they're my age, about why we never got sick as kids. Because when you walked out the door or before you went to school, every morning it was a ritual. You had the oil, oh God, what was it?
Castor oil?
Castor oil.
Oh.
A spoon of castor oil and an onion shoved in your mouth, or a orange shoved in your mouth. I mean, like that. And don't you gag, you swallow it. And we'd all line up.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
every day. That's what you had every morning after breakfast. That's what you had. And the ones up the mall, like, yeah, we do that. And that's why you just didn't get
Well,
sick.
that's how you got your vitamins.
Yeah, and that so. And I mean, we had gardens. We had our own
Fresh stuff.
Fresh stuff. We had a pig that was out in the shed where you go and cut so much off of it.
Yeah, no processed foods.
No
really.
processed foods or anything, and
Yeah.
that so. But I was five, I think it was, because at that point we weren't out on the farm. We were there on Prospect Street, because because I remember on the farm that Gloria and I's thing for every morning was to feed the chickens. And Grandma didn't. I don't think she had chickens, so I'm thinking that memory was from the farm, and that so. But she had everybody had a victory garden back then, and we grew everything. But
What's a victory garden? Because descendants will not know.
would not know what a victory garden. That's how you ate, because I can remember when I was like 6 years old, and Virginia taking me and Gloria up to get the allotted amount of cheese that we could have, and shoes.
And this is because you were growing up during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So you had rationing.
They had
going
rationing,
on.
yeah.
And so victory gardens were a way for you to grow your own food.
Right.
So that you didn't have shortages in your family.
Right.
But you did have a lot of rationing going on with like milk and sugar and eggs and things like that. So
yeah, and we would get the flour that we got in the sacks is what my grandmother would bleach and make clothes out for us.
Oh.
Yeah. We could pick out the pattern, and she'd wash it up to make a dress or whatever out of it.
She was a good seamstress. That's when you were saying that she didn't need a pattern or anything.
She didn't need a pattern. Neither one of my grandmothers, and I think that's part of the farm. You have to learn to make your own stuff, because both my grandmothers were seamstress, and that. But Gloria and I found him dead, sitting on the toilet, leaning up against the wall. I remember that because I thought he was sleeping, because we run back to my grandma and said, "Grandpa's sleeping, we can't wake him," and that. So, and that's when we had the inside bathroom. Is that because before that I don't remember it, but I remember my brothers talking about having to go out, for it. And it was heck if you had the what was it they called it, the skivvies or something, I don't know, that where you needed to be there. But I know we had a pot in the bedrooms and in a washing base, and that's why I have one in my bedroom. Is that, and our baths were, Gloria and I were so lucky, Saturday night baths, and that because it was bringing this great big tub, almost the size of this table,
Can you get
out
my
into the
charger out of
kitchen.
my bedroom? It's on the stool.
And
I'll have to plug it up somewhere.
you'll have to plug it in over there.
I'll tell you what, Pete.
Pause.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we pause